There's a reason these feathers are barbed. By M.J. Panzinco. Chapter 5. A solitary sentence. Just random letters, grouped in lines and rows. Whiplash. Emotional whiplash. So strong had it been, physically, his neck would have snapped in two. Oh, to be nearly run through with a sword. A fucking sword. A fucking sword. Who the fuck just uses a sword in the middle of the goddamn apocalypse? And then watch as the pigman swinging crumples to your feet and sobs in the concrete. Phil has certainly had better nights. The pig probably had as well. Swinging his backpack off with a sigh and a painful tug at his wing, Phil slugged it to the ground and leant against the heavy sack as he eased himself to the ground. Becoming a bird had done little to his joints. He ignored the pain. Sorry about your face there. Phil started to sincere. The wound would scar. Guilt snapped into existence and withered in his chest. Phil ignored it as well. Didn't expect to be woken up by a sword. Keep it light. Keep it light. Why? Why should he keep it light? Years of social events barely survived told him to keep it light. The pigman sobbing at his feet just tried to kill him. The pigman sobbing at his feet, blood is on his hands. It's not even the first blood that night. Chilling realization hooking around his ear. It wouldn't be the last blood on them neither. Keep it light. Keep it light. Phil tried again. The pig straightened a bit and seemed to be making an avid effort to not cry. He failed miserably. But it was the thought that counted. What's your name then? The pigman paused and focused his teary eyes hard into the ground in front of him. He lapped at his tusks with a peach-colored tongue and began to speak. Almost, not quite. He was trying his best, at least. Touch. Take your time, mate. Cho no cho ek. Echo? Echo shook his head, chuffing in a way that was definitely laughter. Hooves far too hard to safely wipe away tears did just that. He rocked backwards to sit on his haunches. He was nearly as tall as Phil, just sitting down. A few more chuffs into his hands and Echo tried again. Techno. Phil frowned. Is there no part of it? A crooked head and a nod. No then? The pigman froze. Techno? Techno began crying again, more violently than before. He buried his face in his hooves as he began to gnaw fiercely, until the cracking joints of his neck chanted like a prayer. Gilsley jointed the guilt in his stomach, hissing fiercely. Techno's body was heavy with sobs, days and weeks of pain sloshing off and out of him like waterfalls. Stills cleaned his wounds. Phil wanted to collapse into himself, cry as well, crying solidarity in understanding. He just wanted to cry. Nice to meet ya, Techno. I'm Fusa. His voice cracked. He stretched out a wing, a four-clawed hand. It felt nice to say his name, introduce himself. to find someone who could appreciate having it, knowing it, maybe even someone who could use it. Phil even tried to smile. He failed miserably, but it was the thought that counted. Techno snorted. Somewhere between a cough, a choke, and a laugh. A hoof was extended, resembling a human hand, in a way that hurt his eyes and his heart alike. They shook hands. Fizz. Would just feel be easier? Fi. It's Phil's turn to cough out a choked laugh. Close enough, mate. Techno snorted and rose from his haunches and glanced around. Phil stood as well, swinging his backpack back across his chest. Techno towered over him like a lighthouse with its red paint faded brown-pink. He made a vague gesture towards the shed. Phil cocked his head hard to the right. Want in? Sure, mate, why not? A key was produced from a pocket in Techno's leg? No, those were sweatpants. Tattered and stained, but what pair wasn't? They would have been loose to the point of formlessness on any normal person, but were stretched so close around Techno's legs they were near invisible. It looked painful. The lock clicked, and Techno moved back to flick the knock. He took the singular step necessary to move him a meter to the right and knelt down beside a half-dismembered corpse. He waved his hoof again. Phil took it as encouragement to enter. The shed was bigger than it looked, or it would be. Theoretically, it wanted to be. It was unfortunately choked with shelves, plastic storage tubs, cleaning supplies, half-melted candles, and books. So many books. Phil wondered if there was a local library missing half its catalog. He supposed that there was no one left to count, no one left to even care, except for Techno apparently. He thought as he delicately ran a hand down a towering stack of gardening guides and scientific journals. There was something oddly sad about them, used to prop up shelves and candlesticks, stacked to block out windows and even out old tables, weights to weigh down a string of drying sinks. Their presence was not natural. They must have been brought here. And yet, they were used as nothing but paperweights, literally. That brought a half smile to his face. Accidental puns. The smile left him. There was a bed in the corner, hidden by a makeshift wall of tubs, stacked towels, and even more books. He put the nest he had left behind to shame. It was blankets and tablecloths and beach and bath towels, woven and braided and knotted. And Phil would see the depression where Techno must lay, curled so tightly as to only take up half of it. He could also, in the dim light of the few lit candles, see the pages. Lined notebooks pages were crumpled and stuffed into corners and pockets and torn up. Lines of smudged handwriting, ample lines of wildly different quality and speed. Phil didn't read them. The neat ones dated and concise. The ones more lead than paper, crushed with such force they became plump. The ones that were simply blank and ripped to shreds. A feeling that he should not be seeing these rose steadily in Phil's stomach. It was far too personal, far too exhausting, pitiful, relatable. Apathy was close to warping its heavy arm around him again. Phil looked vaguely over the alphabet, not able to look away. His eyes caught on a cardboard notebook cover, faded blue and well-worn. There was a name written on the little white plate. It had been scratched out so thoroughly. Gouges were worn and shiny with graffiti, shining like collected tears streams. Phil finally turned away. There was a cramped little love seat, dusty and covered in more junk. With great care, Phil swept most of it onto the floor as an extra barrier between him and the blanketed personal hell he had just borne witness to. Phil sat. It was not comfortable. He could hear the very soft squishing of the creature being skinned outside. The couch's back was too stiff to be much more than wood pampered lightly with scratchy fabric. His wings were too long, too big, too unyielding to lie along the armrest. They weren't arms. He felt a tail feather bend painfully. Phil stood up. He had to stood low to avoid scraping his antlers on the ceiling. Perched on the back of the sofa, his claws crunched satisfyingly through the upholstery and into the backboard. Better than before, at least. Swinging his backpack off his chest, Phil quickly rummaged through it. Silencing his stomach sounded like an amazing distraction. Producing the cloth warped bundle of the egg carton, Phil gingerly unwarped it. There were some sad damp spots, but the majority of the eggs were miraculously unbroken. He cracked on one of his claws and slumped it down. Techno came back in while Phil was in the middle of his third egg. He was hunched over, walking on 3 legs. It looked far too natural. Held in his last hand was a pile of skinned meat, flung over his arm. He opened a deep blue crate to a hiss and rush of cold. An ice box. Techno laid the meat in carefully as Phil watched. He moved slow and methodically, Phil's eyes tracking the glistening meat as it sat raw and enticing on layers of previous kills. Techno turned his head to what Phil watched him. He held out a thinner strip of meat. "Can you eat?" The meat glittering wetly in a candlelight. Techno's eyes reflected the light much the same way. Phil nodded hungrily and stuffed his carton of eggs roughly back into the bag. Techno gave his chuffing laugh and flicked the meat up into the air. He likely meant to catch it and hand it over normally. The THOS reminiscent of a zookeeper throwing meat and a very dark joke given the circus. Phil launched off the back of the couch, pupils slit and caught it perfectly into his mouth. He swallowed it with a toss of his head and harsh snap of his teeth. His tongue licked his lips and ran over his teeth, finding nothing. He swallowed whole. It was then Phil realized Techno was staring at him. Phil drew his wings in closer, running a wrist hand over the other. Techno blinked, snorted, and shut the icebox. "You're not having any?" Phil asked, as if he wasn't twisted sideways, clinging to the wall, hips near perpendicular, so his feet could catch the shelves. Techno shook his head. "Not hungry," he mumbled softly. "Sorry if I put you off dinner, mate." Techno shook his head again. He backed up from the icebox, expression unreadable, before his head snapped up to Phil with a curious look. Phil crooked his head 90 degrees, parallel to the shelves which were beginning to give. Techno placed the skins carefully over an empty line of rope. He turned back to Phil and outstretched his other forelimb. Phil hopped onto it without a second thought. Phil blinked. Techno barely winced as his talons sank into his arm. Phil jerked his head around, looking around the dim room, before back at Techno. His grip tightened somewhat. It felt right to have the thick, unyielding arm under his claws, for it to hold his weight like nothing. Techno walked then towards the back of the shed, back to his bed. He sat on the edge of it, sweeping his arm with Phil around carefully. Phil sunk down, sitting down in a way that felt a little too comfortable for his still very human brain to enjoy. Techno pawed his way past a mound of disorganized laundry hampers before finding a meter-long metal pipe that was just sitting loose. It looked like a steel gutter. Techno dragged it out. It was a steel gutter. Techno bent the top third over like it was made of clay. He shoved it firmly in the seam between the couch and the defunct dryer, and reached out his arm. Phil looked between Techno and the newly formed perch, down to Techno's arm and back at the perch. He hopped onto it. Techno nodded approvingly and rolled himself and half of the blankets into the back half of his nest. Phil could hear papers crumple. Once Techno had been sufficiently buried under a wiggling mound of blankets, he stilled. Phil settled down lower on his perch. Snack was doing something funny, and he didn't care to know what it was. He wrapped his robe up around his legs and ducked his head down to rest his cheek upon his knees. His eyes sleepy closed. He made a friend, he vaguely realized. You don't make acquaintances in the apocalypse, just friends. His thoughts drifted away after that. 40 minutes after he was woken up by Techno's sword, Phil fell asleep at the foot of his bed.